She's not leaving, she's still showing up, and she's still there. But something inside her tells her that something is really wrong. Something inside her has gone quiet. And you can feel it even if neither of you are talking about it. This video is not for her, it's for you. So I can remember very clearly with my partner, with my wife, being active in my addiction, acting out in lots of different ways, pornography, lots of different things. And I was in the relationship and I was hiding 99.9% of everything that I was doing. And the relationship, when I look back at it, wasn't really good. There was a lot of fighting, there was a lot of silence, there was a lot of things underneath that were going on. And I've come to know that my wife probably knew intuitively, even though she didn't know because I was hiding everything. She probably knew intuitively that something was wrong and off. And it was only a matter of time before I got caught. And then, the truth would come out and then everything started to make sense to her. But the pain of that for her was very strong. And it's important for you to hear this if you're active in a sex addiction, what's really going on with your partner. So before discovery, so that's before they discover the extent of your addiction, they just have this sense that something is going on, something is wrong, but they have no evidence of that. So it really drives them crazy. They can just feel it. You can feel it, they can feel it, but they can't put their finger on it. So it's very confusing. And a healthy partner would take a look at that, ask about it, say, what's going on? Is there something going on? And they just know deep down. The problem is the addict denies and lies and gaslights all the time because the truth coming out would hurt their partner or it would hurt them, or they keep telling themselves, tomorrow I'll get it together, I'll stop the behavior so I don't have to tell her. But they know, the partners know what's going on deep down. And then once they make the discovery, so they find out the extent of the acting out, that's when they start to experience what we call betrayal trauma, which is really PTSD-like symptoms that the partners have as a result of your behavior. And it confirms what they already knew. And then all of a sudden, all this anger and all this frustration and all this uncertainty and really, like I said, PTSD symptoms start to come out, and it nearly wrecks the relationship unless the addict particularly gets into recovery and starts to recover from this. But also it's important for partners to get into recovery as well so that they can deal with their own betrayal trauma. And in recovery, it takes a while for that to come back. So if you're getting into recovery and you're sexually sober, you're doing well, the partner remains in those PTSD symptoms, in the betrayal trauma for quite a long time, and it takes a long time to heal. There's a lot of questions, there's a lot of arguments. All of that is really important healing for both of you, and the addict in recovery really needs to support that with an emotional support. The addict really needs to support their partners with empathy first. So in other words, as the partner processes the information of the discovery of the sex addiction and they're going through their own healing process around betrayal trauma, the addict always has to stay in an empathetic response to that. No matter how upset the partner gets, that you understand what they're going through as a result of your behavior. Remember, it's your behavior and the discovery of that caused the betrayal trauma. So the healing on her side is important, but it's also important for you to do your recovery, but to also have those tough conversations for as long as needed. Many times this can take over a year, 2 years, 3 years, where every time you talk about the sex addiction and the betrayal trauma, it's required for you to stay in that empathetic stance, that she understands that you know what you've done and that you're willing to make that right, and that you listen to her and hear her and not gaslight, not minimize, not roll your eyes. These are all the things that happen because the addict wants to crawl under a rock. So when the discovery happens and the partner wants to know all the information, is asking questions, is upset, there's a lot of shame and guilt that comes on the side of the sex addict. And they just kind of want to put their head under the pillow and avoid the conversation and minimize and, what's the big deal? I'm in recovery now, I'm doing well. But these are not things that the partner wants to hear. The partner wants to hear true empathy, to at least to some extent you understand that your behavior has caused the pain in them, and that part of that healing is that you're able to understand that and have empathy for what they're going through. That's where healing starts. And then also it's really important for the addict to have full honesty. So when the partner asks questions, you want to have full honesty. And that's where a disclosure comes in. Sometimes it's recommended to do what they call a full therapeutic disclosure, which is where the partner has a therapist and the sex addict has a therapist. The sex addict prepares a disclosure of all the things they did in a timeline. And the reason they prepare that is so it can be delivered in a way that it can be heard in the most effective way without creating more damage to the partner. And then they come together with both therapists, so both sides have support, particularly the betrayed partner has support, and they come together and they deliver that disclosure. And for a lot of couples, that helps to start over and to move forward from the betrayal. So while it's important to be honest when your partner is asking questions, sometimes it's good to hold off and actually do a therapeutic disclosure so that information can be relayed in a way that's not going to bring more harm to your partner. That is hard for partners to wait. The sort of trauma of the discovery is there, the trauma of waiting for the disclosure because it takes a couple months to create the disclosure and prepare for it, and then the trauma of the disclosure itself. But ultimately, research shows that the relationship is more likely to survive the sex addiction and the betrayal trauma if they do a full disclosure like that. So it is important to be honest, but sometimes you want to take direction from your therapist or your coach to whether or not it might make sense to hold off on telling every detail in favor of doing a therapeutic disclosure. But the point is that the addict is doing the best they can to be honest. They have support. They're able to ask questions. So in our program, when a partner wants to know something and the sex addict is uncertain if the timing is right to tell the partner, then we have supports around that. We can, direct people out to do a disclosure. We can help them understand how to do that, how to approach that, and how to support the betrayed partner with empathy and honesty so the healing can start. There's really two jobs that the sex addict has, which is one, their own recovery and taking responsibility for that, and then also supporting their partner through the betrayal trauma by not gaslighting, not minimizing, not avoiding, but having an empathetic approach and an open, honest approach about where they are in their recovery, how they're doing with their sexual sobriety, answering those questions. So two jobs. Your own recovery for the sex addict, but also supporting your partner empathetically through everything that they go through for as long as it takes. I find early on men will come into my program and they're doing pretty good for a couple of weeks and they're like, I don't know what my partner's problem is right now. The partner's problem is that she's still suffering from betrayal trauma, and it's going to take a very long time for her to start to work through that and to start to heal that. So you got to continue repetitively over and over again to support her empathetically through that process. I find in my program, sometimes around 1 year, a relationship will then start to show some signs of improvement. So in other words, the partners start to feel better. They start to trust his recovery more. They start to believe more what he's saying. So because for very long, they just didn't believe anything coming out of his mouth, which totally makes sense because he hid and lied and minimized and gaslit, for many, many years. They start to trust again. And that's where it's super important. Once you start to get that, the partner's healing is evident there, that you maintain the recovery, you continue working through the relationship issues, and it's really a lifelong journey in the relationship. Hey, if you're a sex addict, porn addict, and you're struggling with this and you're interested in what we do in my 12-week recovery coaching program, somewhere around this video, there's a link. Click through, book a call with one of my recovery advisors, talk about your situation, see what's going on, see if it makes sense to help you. And if it is, we'll walk through what it would look like working together in my program. You can consider enrolling in that and really getting in an amazing place in your recovery so that you can start the healing in your relationship and have a really nice life. Click the link below. Check that out. We'll talk soon.